Hey everybody, I am joined right now by Dark Side of the Ring producers Evan Husney and Jason Eisener. We're going to be talking about season 3B coming up very soon. It kicks off with a batch of new episodes starting September 16th, just a week away. A lot of excitement, a lot to get into. First and foremost, how are you guys doing today?
Doing great. Thanks for having us, Bill.
Yeah, good to see you again, man.
Appreciate taking the time to talk again. There's a lot of excitement going on. No more evident than last night's episode of AEW Dynamite. I was really thrilled to see that because I knew we were talking this morning, but there was a Linda Pillman chant going on in Cincinnati last night. You guys got in on the fun, but just talk a little bit about, seeing that sort of be a product of one, like the show that you created, like obviously the story is the families, but you were able to bring it to a wider audience and handle it the right way. And I mean, Linda has her own t-shirts now. Like just talk about like how you're feeling seeing that all come together after this.
Well, I'll tell you, it's been just, I think this year with the show has just been super humbling to us because, we never ever in our wildest dreams thought that our show or the work that we would do would really start to influence the actual wrestling community in such a way that you would see on weekly cable television like that. So that's just super cool, but it's also shown us really kind of the power of the platform and how something that I think now as we're going forward really kind of keeping in check in terms of like we saw with the Nick Gage episode, like man, like that was surreal to see, here comes our Nick Gage story. And then, our narrator is wrestling him on, on primetime television, primetime cable television. And then to be able to see, just seeing Linda last night, Linda Pillman was so heartwarming and amazing because that's our ideal scenario, in terms of the outcome of these shows. Is like I just remember hoping the best for Brian Jr. coming out of the Pillman episode, but then also like I just in the back of my mind I just had this wish that if Linda walked out down the ramp, she'd be so over right now, and then it was so cool just to really see that last night. It was just amazing, and CM Punk putting over the show as well is like those are real markout moments for us for damn sure.
It was definitely, it was crazy. Like, when we did the voice or the narration recording with Chris Jericho for the Nick Gage episode, he hadn't really heard of Nick Gage before then. Like he was coming in, asking us questions about it. And I remember looking to Evan at some point while we were editing the episode saying, I have a feeling Nick Gage is going to wind up in AEW after this episode comes out.
Yeah.
And it did. And
you called it.
It's surreal, to see. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. The whole entire response to that episode alone, but also kind of how Nick's career and GCW has kind of been elevated. It's really cool to see, but I want to get into the next batch of episodes because you're starting off with a story that I would say, if people can believe it, is probably more highly anticipated than any other show you've done, if not at least top three. I'll put it there because there's been some really, really great topics, but the plane ride from hell is something that I would say a large part of the current viewing audience experienced, but they don't know too much about, but at the same time, they know everything about. Like you heard all the stories, you heard different perspectives. TNA kind of turned it into a storyline. Kurt Hennig, hey, I'm the guy that took down Brock Lesnar at 3,500 feet or 35,000 feet. So talk about the decision not only to lead off 3B with that, but, did you guys learn anything new from that experience, despite it being sort of that story based on legend and lore?
Well, yeah, I think, ever since the beginning of the show, it's always been a possible topic, only in that because it's so infamous, and it's something I've heard all about for years and years. Most of our fans, even our friends, are like, when's the plane ride from hell? When are you going to do plane ride from hell? So it's been this constant sort of white noise in terms of like, us with this show. When are you going to do it? And for us, we were always very hesitant to do it because it sort of, seemed like the only path forward was creating sort of a episode that kind of glorified, wild party antics that spiraled out of control in the sky, and we didn't really see the path of how that could really be an episode, even though it was in such high demand. And we didn't want to just do it just for those reasons. And when we started to research the story and to talk to people on and off the record about the story, that's when it really started to kind of emerge as, okay, well, this is a bigger story, and we always try to look at with Dark Side of the Ring. Yes, it's about wrestling and it's about these wrestlers, but it's always looking at society and culture also through the lens of wrestling, and I think this episode is something that is going to surprise a lot of people, is that, I think that's what this story is going to do best. It's going to create a lot of conversation. And I think a lot of people are going to be debating it, after next week. But I do think that it is a view into our own society and our own culture kind of through the story of this wacky, plane ride that, totally got out of control. But, for us, it was absolutely eye-opening, despite even knowing everything that we knew going into it.
Yeah. You know what? You're right in the fact that, that's one of those stories that people kind of glorified over the years, even though you have somebody like a Scott Hall or like Kurt Hennig, who's not here to tell his story. And there are obviously very negative parts to that story, but for the most part, It's like, oh man, these guys got, they got crazy on the plane and, like playing it up. But on that note, it's a story that I guess is amplified because of social media, even though it was around before then. But every so often you also see people be like, oh, that'll be on Dark Side of the Ring in X amount of years. Like current storylines, is there something like, are there storylines? And it kind of speaks to what you said about not wanting to cover it because of how to handle it. Is there any stories you don't want to cover or maybe think needs more time to cover?
Yeah. I think, a lot of like more contemporary stories are things that happen in the industry where, you do see that on social media where like, Dark Side of the Ring. Well, this will be on Dark Side of the Ring. I think that's kind of become, memeified a little bit. Mm-hmm. I think for us, it really comes down to like, you don't want to commit to doing a story if it's not been told yet, if it's not over, it's not finished. Like imagine even having the epilogue of the Nick Gage episode being the fact that, he's overcome all this and now he's, he's slicing open on a narrator. I think that would have been a great cap to that thing. So you don't want to get in too early on some stories because they might not be over. And then for us, like, there are stories and, that we don't want to tell or we can't see a way of telling because the right people aren't here to tell it any longer, or it's just like you don't have access. And if you don't have either of those things, it probably just, you don't want to do that kind of inauthentic, non-firsthand version of it, because then it kind of teeters into, okay, now we're just exploiting it. And that was something I was very protective over with Plane Ride from Hell, to tie it back to this, was I don't want it to, if we didn't get the right people to talk about it, I didn't want to talk about it because then it just might just be that crazy party story.
Yeah, everyone in the episode was on that plane ride.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Obviously, everybody's going to have their own favorite. That's starting things off. Bookending things with the steroid trials. I feel like that's another one of those stories where a large group of people lived through it, but maybe don't know the whole story. And some people know it from like going back through documentation. And in the middle of that, I'll personally say I'm really looking forward to the Chris Kanyon episode and the Luna Vachon episode, because their own respective lives were very private, but the on-screen persona, and now you're peeling back those layers. You find out after the fact about how genuine and nice, caring Luna was as a person. The same thing for Chris, and how many people talk about his wrestling ability, but the kind of people that they were behind the scenes.
Yeah.
I mean, any episode like that stick out that you're really, you know, anticipating people finding out more? Like you mentioned the Nick Gage episode kind of opening people's eyes to him and that scene of wrestling. Is there any episode that, you know, you really think people are going to have, you know, have that sort of impression on again this time with season 3B?
Well, I think Jason, you'd concur. I think that, yeah, I mean, Chris Kanyon, absolutely. I think it's going to be cool to spotlight his wrestling ability and how ahead of the curve he really was. I think you can kind of look at where wrestling is today, the modern style of wrestling, and really trace it back to, you know, what Kanyon was doing. I think he was a pioneer for his time. But I think a lot of people are going to see that, you know, yeah, I mean, that's a heartbreaking story. You know, Chris's struggles outside of the ring were really heavy. And I think this episode is definitely one of the more emotional of the second half. Still gets me every time I've watched it. I've seen it probably 100 times and it gets me every time. So that one, I'm looking forward to people just discovering Chris, you know, as a source of inspiration. But I'm also, on the flip side, really excited to see how, you know, fans, you know, who may not be as familiar, discover the world of FMW. You know, I think the world of FMW is just, it's mind blowing. It takes your breath away when you see some of those set pieces and those matches, you know, with the exploding pools, the exploding rings, you know, the electrified barbed wire. All that stuff is so visually captivating. And I think Onita as a person and as his career, I think is going to captivate a lot of audiences. And I'm really excited just to see people just discover that, because over the quarantine, that's what I did. I went back and rewatched, you know, and dove into all these FMW matches. And I have to say that it's some of the most entertaining wrestling I think I've ever seen. So I'm excited for people to really, you know, get on that train.
Yeah. And it's same for me. I just finished working on the Luna Vachon episode. And so that one's pretty close to me right now. And I'm excited for people to see, you know, her life story and she's just so inspirational in how committed she was to her character and how her philosophy on trying to like get herself over. She's just, it's really inspiring and also heartbreaking. But she has such a crazy life story. And I'm also excited for people to see the XPW episode, because a lot like our UWF episode last year, which people really liked. This one is a dive into a world of wrestling also that I don't think a lot of wrestling fans are familiar with, but a promotion that tried to mix pornography and wrestling kind of together, those two worlds, you know, together. Yeah. It's a wild story and the lengths that it goes. And I think people are going to be really intrigued by the characters that are in that episode and some
most
of the
definitely
crazy stories. Because have you seen the New Jack episode that we did in season 2, where New Jack threw Vic Grimes off of that scaffolding, like down onto those tables? Like, people, I know audiences were like, "Oh my god! Like, who would allow for something like that to happen?" That's XPW. That's XPW.
Yeah. That's just a night.
Yeah. That's just one night.
Yeah.
This is going to be one of those episodes where I feel like XPW, you either experienced live or it was like during the tape trader era, and it's kind of lived on. And now you're going to open the door to here's all the stuff that was going on. And so, yeah, I'm really excited to check it out.
I can't imagine. I have yet to be at a wrestling event that takes it that far, you know, or even a hardcore live wrestling event. Like, Evan just went to a GCW event a few weeks ago and experienced that, like, right
I can't believe the glass is literally flying in your face. I did not anticipate that, because I was like, yeah, front row seats, GCW, you know, and then like I just couldn't believe that like the glass was actively like coming towards our faces, and that's pretty intense, you know.
Yeah.
So, but yeah,
something you got to look out for. I know, you know, you hear all the time, like, when you're at a baseball game, you got to watch out for if you're sitting down low for like foul balls. But no, at shows like that, you have to watch out for like glass and thumbtacks and all that stuff flying. So,
but it really was amazing. I mean, I have to just, now that we brought it up, like, I just have to say real quick that, you know, that that show, I was at the Matt Cardona Nick Gage
Mhm.
match just a few months ago, or wherever it was. I have to just say, like, that being there in front row for that was an experience I've never had at a live wrestling show, in terms of the heat that was there when he
Mhm.
won that title. Like, it was real. Like, I saw GCW Nick Gage fans walking around red-faced, angry, some with tears in their eyes. I mean, this was real to that
Mhm.
crowd, and I mean, and it was amazing to experience, and just hats off to everybody involved that was so expertly done, in
Yeah.
terms of that whole thing. Probably one of the most amazing moments that I've ever seen live, in wrestling, period. Like, it was great.
Yeah, they've gotten so much out of that and done it so well. Like, I think I don't think anybody even gave Matt a chance of winning, and then what he's been able
No.
to do since then has just been amazing. So credit to him, credit to
Great.
GCW. Yeah, kind of bringing things back around. I can't wait to see the reaction to XPW.
Yeah, totally.
But
Yeah.
very exciting. I encourage everybody to check out Dark Side of the Ring. Season 3B kicks off September 16th. It airs each week all the way through October 28th. There's a lot of cool topics. I'll run down the list really quick, but the Plane Ride from Hell, Chris Canyon episode, FMW, Johnny K9, Luna Vachon, XPW, and then the steroid trial. So there's a lot of infamous stories in there. It's really, really going to be a good batch of episodes that people should
spend
really
your
tune
Halloween
into.
with the McMahons. Spend your Halloween with the McMahons for the steroid trials. And
there you go.
Yeah, it'll be great.
All right. Evan and Jason, thanks again for the time. Check out Dark Side of the Ring, guys.
All right. Thanks, Bill.
Have a good one.
You too.